So even if we have just seen various signs of problems, the strength of America's economy in the 1920s came to an end in October 1929 with the Wall Street crash. Well, what is a stock market crash? A stock market crash is a sudden, dramatic decline of stock prices caused by a series of factors that led many people lose their businesses and life savings. What are the causes? What were the causes of this crash? We've seen that by 1929, American unsold goods were accumulating, so production was reduced. As a consequence of this, many factories failed and closed. And since shares decrease in value when the economy is in crisis, wiser investors started selling their shares. So basically, the first who realized what was about to happen. So they started selling shares rather than buying them because they expected the prices to fall. People buy shares instead if they are confident that prices will keep rising. This caused a general panic, and all the people who invested in the stock market rushed to sell their shares. And the value of the stocks dramatically collapsed. Praticamente il valore cade e insomma cala a picco, diciamo. Panic increased, and on Thursday, October 24th, 1929, soon renamed Black Thursday from the expression to be in the black, which means to be profitable, quindi essere redditizio. Because of the large volume of shares on that day, so many shares were sold. So they called it Black Friday, but Black Thursday actually it comes from the same expression of Black Friday, so to be in the black, because in the past accountants, quindi I contabili, no, originally used black ink, quindi l'inchiostro nero, nei loro libri contabili, in business records, to indicate profit. Quindi l'inchiostro nero indicava il profitto. And red ink, l'inchiostro rosso, indicated a loss. Indicava invece la perdita. Quindi questa è un po' la storia del Black Thursday e del Black Friday. Black Friday in realtà perché invece si vendono cose, insomma è la giornata di grandi sconti, la gente compra molto. Ok, questa è una piccola curiosità, chiudiamo parentesi. So, on Black Thursday, a record 13 million shares were sold, and on October the 29th, other 60 million shares were sold in a single day. And since everyone was selling and nearly no one was buying, stock's value continued to decline. Quindi il valore di queste azioni calava a picco perché appunto vennero vendute in massa. The effects of this crash in America were dramatic. 15,000 banks failed, causing the loss of many people's savings. Investors, and we said there were investors from the low and middle classes as well. Investors lost heavily. In many cases, they were unable to repay the creditors who had provided them with expensive loans, I prestiti, no? Some had often borrowed money using their homes as security. So the banks repossessed them, quindi qualcuno aveva praticamente ipotecato la casa, ecco, pur di insomma comprare queste azioni. Many foolishly invested their life savings, i risparmi di una vita, and lost everything they had. And many of them, even committed suicide. All of this had a very important economic impact as well. These people could not afford to spend money anymore, and therefore they did not buy consumer products, and as there was no buying, thousands of shops, companies, factories went bankrupt and closed, and nobody employed people to make products that were not being sold, that nobody bought, so unemployment rose to 14 million by 1932 in the USA and 50 million in Europe. And we'll talk about Europe in a minute. This crash led to the period in America that became known as the Great Depression, a major economic crisis that lasted from 1929 until the late 1930s, during which 1/3 of Americans were living below the poverty line. So 1/3 of Americans were extremely poor during this Great Depression. I found another brief video that perfectly sums up what happened, with original scenes from offices and the stock market trading floor. Again, there's no audio, it's just to give you an idea. You can watch it at home by yourselves, so you can also listen to what they say, but it's basically describing what we've just seen together. And these are actually original scenes from 1929. And there was an extreme panic. Wall Street, which is a street where the stock market was in New York. And that was pretty much the atmosphere that year. Okay, now let's talk about Europe. Since the world's economies were more interconnected than ever before, and also Europe depended upon American investments and loans, the effects of the crash of the American economy were soon felt throughout Europe. The spread of the economic crisis in Europe accelerated when America extended protectionism, and also America suspended its loans to Europe. So America was not giving loans to Europe anymore. So protectionism is basically when a country approves or has laws or rules that make goods and products from foreign countries more expensive and make it easier for their own products to sell. So when a country raises a tariff on another country, usually the other country raises their tariffs on that country as well. And this is precisely what happened between Europe and America. When the United States raised tariffs very high on Europe, so So Americans, in order to get products from Europe, had to pay a lot, and this encouraged Americans to buy American products. In response, Europe raised its tariffs on the United States. As a consequence of this, international trade crashed, quindi il mercato internazionale, insomma, praticamente aveva raggiunto, insomma, il minimo storico, quindi non c'erano praticamente più scambi tra le varie nazioni. And this made the decline in production worse. Soon after, the dramatic effects that this crash had in America spread across Europe and the rest of the world as well. So European banks collapsed, unemployment rose to 50 million people, and there was no more buying, and thousands of shops and factories failed and closed. Okay, now, how did European nations try to deal with this crisis? For example, we're talking about Germany, Britain, France. Okay, they adopted a set of political economic policies called austerity policies aimed to reduce budget deficits. Budget deficits are when expenses, quindi le spese, are higher than the income. Sono maggiori delle entrate in pratica, no? Quindi questo è uno stato di crisi. And aim to reduce this budget deficit, governments used spending cuts, so wages were lowered, public spending was decreased, tax increases, so people had to pay more taxes. And these policies, though, helped to further reduce the international demand, aggravating unemployment and worsening the state of crisis in which Europe was. Okay, the European economy wouldn't show signs of recovery until 1933 and also until the outbreak of the Second World War. As far as the German crisis is concerned, the impact of the economic crisis were particularly severe in Germany, especially because American loans, which had sustained the German economy since 1924, ceased in late 1929. And also, Germany had to make reparation payments to the Allies. And in the picture, you can see clearly how this loan system worked. So the German government failed to respond effectively to the crisis, as Brüning, who became chancellor in 1930, adopted austerity policies, as we said before, that caused a general discontent. So he increased taxes, implemented wage cuts, cut public services, and so on and so forth. And so, indeed, with the spread of unemployment, dissatisfaction with the policies of the German government intensified. And basically, his policies only contributed to further government instability, and many became more and more convinced that democratic politics could not solve the growing crisis. And this led many German voters to abandon democracy and look to more radical alternatives, such as Adolf Hitler's Nazi Party. To conclude, we can say that this economic crisis was one of the contributing factors for the outbreak of the Second World War in the end.